Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You've reached the No Name Cinema Society, the film review show that dares to dig just a little bit deeper. This is episode 78, and tonight we continue our exploration of the films from the Oscar season of 50 years ago. That's 1974. And tonight's film for discussion brings us the Disney adventure film, The Island at the Top of the World. Hi, everybody. My name is Jonathan Betzler. I'm one of your hosts for the evening. I'm here at my home in Los Angeles, California, and I've got a couple panelists to discuss this film with me tonight. First, a scientific sound designer unwittingly dragged halfway across the world to review movies he doesn't want to watch but becomes fascinated by anyway. Ladies and gentlemen, Matthew Polis is back.
Hello, Jonathan.
And also, ladies and gentlemen, doing his first show, a wealthy movie producer who's convinced that Matty Polis is the only person that can help him find his friend Trell. Nick Bunch is with us.
Hello. Happy to be here.
And that's a very insidey joke that only Nick is really going to get.
That's so funny.
But anyway, welcome, Nick, to the No Name Cinema Society. I'm very excited.
Thank you. I'm excited as well.
The opening and closing song that we had for tonight is a pretty famous one and kind of apt for this film in a way. Jim Croce's Time in a Bottle. One could argue that this island's inhabitants have managed to capture Time in a Bottle. Croce was mostly popular on an underground level, as sort of a folk artist, but Time in a Bottle came in as the 24th biggest song of 1974, and it may be the song from 1974 that has had the most staying power over the years. My first introduction to this song was actually The Muppet Show. The Muppets did this really cool segment with this old man singing a song. As he sang the song, he was drinking a potion and would poof be a younger scientist. He went younger and younger and younger until he wound up old again. It's actually a beautiful little sketch if you've ever seen some of the old Muppet Show episodes. Nick does not know what the Muppet Show is, do you, Nick?
I do know the Muppet Show. I'm not that young.
My interesting tidbit about this particular movie is coming up in two shows, and our 1974 exploration is a very similar film to this one. It's called The Land That Time Forgot, based on a story by Edgar Rice Burroughs. All right, The Island at the Top of the World. I mostly covered this in my panelist intros, but Sir Anthony Ross forcibly hires Professor Iverson, the world's foremost authority in the Arctic, to travel there to find Ross's missing son. But what they find there is a mysterious land shut off from the rest of the world. So opening thoughts, I want to get a basic sense if they like the film or not, and just like one sentence, why. So Maddie P, you're first. Had you seen this film before, Maddie?
I had not seen it.
What did you think about The Island at the Top of the World?
I think this is a good enough film that is perfect for fans of Uncharted and Bedknobs and Broomsticks.
There's a couple references there. Bedknobs and Broomsticks from 1971, and Uncharted, I assume you mean the Mark Wahlberg, Tom Holland thing from a couple years ago? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, which is really based on a video game series, but yes, action, whatever, and then Bedknobs and Broomsticks, aesthetic and sensibility.
Oh, Nick, what about you?
I couldn't help but notice I was always watching a Disney film throughout the entire time, but overall it was okay. Probably wouldn't watch it again.
Okay, and for me, the story itself I found to be terrific with a ton of potential, but the Disney Corporation had a different agenda. My opening thoughts are very similar to Nick's, and I'm going to start with the screenplay and talk about that because it's the story itself that I feel like had potential, not necessarily the script, because to me the script execution is severely lacking. Adventure and awe are prioritized over character, which means this film ultimately lands flat for me. The father-son dynamic could have been a real emotional thrust, but instead they just simply exchange a few apologies and shake hands, then back to the chase. We're left with nothing to care about. The script's characterization of Sir Anthony Ross as blustery, borderline mean, and a focused eccentric belies the real pain the character most likely felt from having a missing son. I can understand being extremely driven by the love and potential loss of his son, but this actor doesn't really play that, nor does the script provide the opportunity. I'll get into the acting a little later. Similarly, the religious leader of the Vikings has a genuine fear of the erstwhile invaders, but his attitude is bloodthirsty and villainous. His concerns are genuine. Why can they not be portrayed that way and provide the film with actual nuance and conflict? They are at a real cross purpose, which is compelling. As such, this is an early standout as a film from 1974 that I think could use a remake. We always answer that question at the end of the year. I would likely lean more into the source material and provide better options amongst the cast and creative team to mine all that story that I think it has to offer. It's all baked in there, and the script and director Robert Stevenson failed to bring it out as far as I'm concerned. Nick, I'm wondering how much that gels with what you were thinking.
Yeah, I agree. I think it has plenty of opportunity to be something great. I like the idea, the whole back. Like you said, the screenplay wasn't my favorite, but the idea and the theme, the whole story itself has tons of potential. Could be done quite well if we remade properly, honestly.
They love remaking stuff at Disney,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this should be top of the list.
Top of the list on top of the world.
Top of the world.
Maddie P, what do you think about what I had to say about the screenplay?
I think you thought about it more than the filmmakers did, to be honest.
That's what I do here. That's why I need to remake it.
This one to me seems like of the day, sort of an action cash grab type thing where it was about spectacle. It was relying on that for its success, and maybe it was and maybe it wasn't, but I don't think they were digging deep.
You referenced Bedknobs and Broomsticks earlier, and I think it's less about what the culture overall was doing in 1974, but I think it's about what Disney was doing as far as their live action films in 1974. Because I think Bedknobs and Broomsticks is a good comp in the sense that also seemed to prioritize in that case, it was, magical whimsy and visual effects to dazzle young audiences. That seemed the priority here as well.
That seemed like a little more along the lines of Mary Poppins. Like that is like that, but substance too. Like that's like a better version of it.
A fair reference too, because it's the same director as Mary Poppins.
Really?
I felt like Mary Poppins was less of a comp. All those things, the story things, the nuance things, the detail things that Mary Poppins has going on is absent here. And so, and I was going to dig into that a little bit later. Have you seen Mary Poppins at least, Nick?
I have, of course, yes.
And that's so where I'm going next in terms of Robert Stevenson as director. That was my next topic here. And he has stumbled upon some good films in his long and obedient Disney career, and that's my key word there, obedient. And of course, most famously having directed Mary Poppins. If you look at his total oeuvre, his expertise does seem to be in finding the visual flair and pushing the envelope in terms of effects. And that's true here as well. The scene work in this film, however, is terribly lacking, and the humor is toothless. There's a lot of visual treats, and while the action is hardly Indiana Jones, it's mostly satisfying and only occasionally dated. As I said, he directed Mary Poppins, which means he directed an Oscar-winning performance. Unfortunately, the performances here are quite terrible, one note, and entirely without substance. Since they are all extremely bad, he has to be held responsible. We normally have a section on performances, but I do not. I have nothing to say about the individual performances. They are among the worst that I've seen in all the films from 1974 from this year. They're pretty terrible to me.
At no point during this ostensibly action thriller type of genre did I feel any risk of anything. Interesting to watch. The concepts were good, but there seemed to be no stakes. And not to say that there weren't stakes, like you could fall, you could get captured, you could get whatever. It never occurred to me that would happen.
There were stakes in the story, but the director tonally did not bring them out.
Direction, I guess acting is responsible, writing's responsible. And tone of acting, you're kind of bleeding into the acting a little bit. They never acted as if anything other than their plan could take place.
Yeah, and as I was just saying, I wasn't going to talk about acting because it was just bad, and I don't have much else to say about it outside from that. So I'm sort of throwing it under the direction segment because if the performances are all this bad, I have to blame Robert Stevenson. Maybe he's not in control of casting, like Disney is, famously, has this sort of controlling atmosphere at the studio, especially then. So it's possible he couldn't control the casting, but they were very, very not good actors, and even if they were good actors in other things, everyone, was rudderless here. Nick, anything about direction or acting in general?
Yeah, it was a hard watch, and you could place blame anywhere, anytime, however you want, in top, above the line, below the line, whatever. But man, it was kind of a tough watch. There wasn't much room for them to grow and expand on their characters. It was very one note, very gimmicky to a point. And again, I was just constantly reminded, I'm like, this is a Disney movie. And an older Disney movie, and it's not a good reminder, not a subtle one either.
It does feel like they interfered almost. This emphasis on visual effects feels like a mandate, a company mandate kind of a thing. I wondered early on if that ship that they created, that hovercraft thing, was like one of the reasons they wanted to do the movie in the first place. The actual elements of the story, it's like they weren't interested.
It felt like every scene was the same scene. They had different words and they were in different backdrops, but the connection, the emotional impact, if any, was like literally the same from the first scene to the last to the big climax in the middle, like the same.
With Anthony Ross being, I need to find my son under any circumstances, and the professor being, well, let's, show some temperance here, and Mako being like, oh my God, they're so scary, the bad guys are going to kill us with the whales. We're talking about how bad the performances are. There is an Oscar-nominated actor in this cast. Does anybody want to guess who is the Oscar-nominated actor in this cast?
Professor Iverson, if I had to guess.
Nope. Maddie, any guesses?
I would. I don't know. I mean, they all could be. They're all the same in this movie. So who knows? Maybe like the Thor, the guy. I don't know. The evil. I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe the dad.
Nope, not the dad. Actually, Mako, the one-name Japanese actor. He's sort of their Eskimo guide. He was nominated in 1966 Best Supporting Actor for a film called The Sand Pebbles. He did a lot of Disney films, often, playing, unfortunately, stereotypical any Asian kind of role that they had, he would play. And you hear him talk about it. Mako, he just was happy to have Asian faces on screen. Like he felt like he was loosening the lid of the pickle jar, so he was okay with it at the time.
So at the very end, the sort of climax escape scene where they go back and they find the airship in rags and tatters, and he's like, I got this to work because I'm going to drop everything out, and there's just enough elevation force to get us out of here. That was like a very specific sort of scientific thing. He still had turning capacity. They went up and they had like he just dropped all of the things that would allow him to do that, but had like precise steering.
For that to work, they would need to basically float, right? Like that's the science of it.
They would go up. And then they even blamed the next scene. They blamed the steering on whatever they couldn't get out of. Like, I can't steer. We're going to hit the wall again. But as soon as it just this continuity thing, they didn't realize it because it looked better. But they were steering like right away, like instantly.
That's some next level science kind of continuity that only Matt Polis brings to this show.
Is the kind of science this movie begs of its viewers.
Yeah, I wish it would taught a little science. Like I wish it like took if it wants to be a kids movie, I wish it like took the time to be like explain the science instead of just hoping that we buy it.
You can tell they really focused on the visuals. They put all their money and bank on the visuals, and that was literally it.
There are films that have good visuals and good scripts too. And the thing is, with such good source material, what I expect is good source material. What seems like it's good source material, like they made something good worse. I'm sure there were things that they felt like they couldn't get away with in a Disney film, so things were cut for a rating or for a younger audience. Like that was a factor for them. Seemed to really handicap them in this particular story. All right, so I think I'm going to move on, guys. This will be new to Nick to some degree, but it's might be Maddie P's favorite section where maybe we appreciate the film a little bit more. Maddie P, what time is it?
It's themes. It's the T word. That feels a little bit old, and why are we still doing it?
Okay, good to know, but it is the T word. So in the old days when we talked about the themes, one of our founding members, Drunk Davey, didn't like to talk about themes. He thought it felt like homework. So we had to dance around it, tiptoe around it, called it the T word, and a segment was born. So now it's its own segment. We can retire it, I suppose. Audiences seem to like it, so we just keep going. Because to me, there are the concepts of colonialism, environment and ecology, and the specter of progress that hang over the narrative. But all of them are pretty much ignored by the artists of the film, and I feel like they were meant to explore them similar to how their characters were supposed to explore the Arctic. In terms of colonialism, the Vikings are rightly afraid that this small party of outsiders can only mean that there will be more to come, which would interfere with the lives they've set up. Now, does that mean these outsiders need to be murdered? I mean, one would hope not, but this is where things get gray, and that could have been interesting. It'd be more humane to let them go, but at what cost? With that said, their way of life is hardly a utopia like in Lost Horizon, for example. And from these outsiders' perspective, they can foresee ways in their minds to improve the lives of the island's inhabitants, introducing them to more modern ideas and technology. Which brings me to progress. Now, throughout the movie history, especially in Westerns, you see a wistful reluctance to succumb to the inevitable train of human development. Yeah, trains and automobiles come along, but was it worth the loss of open space, for example? Do our lives really need to move that fast? This hidden island has avoided that and are stubbornly focused on continuing in their blissful ignorance. And even the professor has to wonder, maybe they are right. Does enhanced travel and knowledge and globalism make our lives better, or is it just a faster path to our own extinction? And that's my segue to environment. The lack of technological advancements on this mysterious island has preserved the world as it was, a setting with cleaner air and water and a diverse animal population. All the things that environmentalists strive for even today. Which brings up the final societal complexity. Is there a way to balance exponential advancement and environmental security? Or does it have to be one or the other? The island, of course, is the example of a world focused on preservation of the environment, and the world of 1974 and our modern world, even more so, are the polar opposites, if you pardon the pun. Is a happy medium possible, or is it far too late? I've got colonialism, progress, and environment here. In the fabric of this film, I grant you the film failed to explore this in any meaningful way. Nick, did any of those things mean anything to you?
Yeah, especially the progress in the environmental aspect, because at the end, Professor was saying the modern world could be ending anytime soon, but if anything is going to be left standing, it's probably going to be this. And that's why I think he chose to stay. And I also think one of the themes was that I picked up, what seemed every character was doing was to do something or find something they loved. And it was a relentless pursuit of doing this or finding this and achieving this, whatever they loved that goal was. Finding their son, history from the archaeologist, taking the daughter and taking her back with him, the French guy with the ship.
So that ties in a little bit in the sense that the professor's goals are more about, this preservation of the environment, and where the captain is about the technology, right? Advancement of technology, his own personal glory that would come from his invention, moving the world forward. So their passions are sort of connected to what I'm talking about. The father-son thing is really bungled to me and it doesn't really work. So, but yeah, I see your point. Maddie, anything that anybody said?
Well, from what you said, what stuck out to me were a couple, I guess this relates to Back Before, so I'll just say it first, but they didn't show violence in this movie, but certainly they talked about it when they said, we're going to kill you just for showing up, which is like very striking, even for modern standards.
But I understand it. Like, I understand, like they felt threatened, like, immediately.
Right. So then moving into the category of, I guess, colonialism / progress is combined. Do you think that it's this culture, these people are aware of the outside world, like sort of the Amish are, and they're just not interested? Or is it like gods must be crazy and they're just like no awareness of it? It seems like it must be the former, because nobody is fazed by the cable knit sweaters and sky tech that they bring in. But generally in a situation like this, in movies and whatever, you expect the leaders to know more about the base population, and they know that there's people out there with tech, but the base people aren't aware of that because they would probably want it or whatever. And so, but nobody seemed to bat an eye at anything these people brought in. So you must think that they have these visitors all the time, but yet they don't seem to have them all the time because they're very hard to find, A, and B, they kill them right away. So there's like a mismatch.
I mean, the thing is, I imagine they've had visitors that they have killed. They made this exception for Ross's son. You had this relationship with this girl, for whatever decision they made this exception. But the idea is he couldn't leave because they kill people if they want to leave. So yes, I think that a lot of what you said is true. My theory is that the elders, the leaders, as you call them, they're definitely aware of the outside world, but are very focused on preventing the outside world from finding out about them. And therefore, that was the deal they made. The devil's bargain is you can stay Ross's son, but you can never leave.
But they don't seem to be fazed by anything else that they probably have never seen before. Outfits, clothing, whatever. But that was a little bit of a weird thing.
No, a visitor they didn't want it. They wanted no part of the outside magic. You know what I mean? Like almost as a whole, with occasional, like if I recall, an exception or two. But for the most part, they wanted no part of the modern world.
Right.
I think they're blissfully unaware.
They're there because they don't know any better. They're on this island because they don't know that there's anything outside this island.
Yeah, but I think it's just bad writing, that the fact that they're just kind of whatever about this gigantic airship that's flying in.
I kind of disagree, and maybe I'm giving it more credit than I ought to. But again, if I were doing a remake, I would sort of lean in that direction where they are aware and are making a choice to avoid the world. And that's sort of akin to, has anybody seen the 1937 Frank Capra film, Lost Horizon, about this hidden utopia called Shangri-La? It's a fabulous film, top 100 all time for me. I highly recommend it. Maybe someday we'll talk about or review it. But inhabitants of Shangri-La are definitely aware of the outside world, but they feel like they've built a utopia and are like devoted to it. In fairness, the people that live there, everyone shares and they're completely wealthy and they have unlimited resources. This does not feel like utopia. Like they could be living a quote unquote better life here. But they are skeptical that a better life exists, it seems to me.
Why do you feel like they're aware?
The sun came before, the professor and Anthony Ross. To Matt's point, it does not feel like these are the first people they've seen, like the Eskimos. It sounded like the Eskimos had been there to some degree before, at some point earlier, but no one returns, right? So to report of this other place, I have to think that people have discovered them. They've killed them so that they could maintain their quote unquote anonymity.
A sort of a more contemporary analog that is coming to mind are the zombie shows and movies like The Last of Us and Walking Dead, because they have these closed off societies. They're fearing anyone coming in, whether a human or not. They want to kill them on sight for fear that they would either infiltrate and affect them, or they go and tell other people, and then all of a sudden thousands of people want to come into their walled garden. And sometimes it is utopic, and sometimes it's more just like survival mode. But it does feel like anyone coming here will probably not make it out alive, and even if they're their own kind, especially if they're not their own kind.
And even Fallout on Amazon, right? That they had a similar thing where they had vault dwellers.
Another video game reference. Mm-hmm. That's 3 for this show. I'm happy.
All we want to do is make you happy, Maddie.
Thank you. But also in the sense that they've got these like 2 or 3 or whatever 5 leaders, and the rest of the people are going rote through the paces. That's how a lot of those societies are too. There's like 1 or 2 like uber leaders, and then the rest of the people are just kind of like surviving. That the dynamics seem very similar.
I buy that the comps. They're both accurate and interesting.
That's why you're thinking that's why they kill everyone who comes in and nobody can go back to report. They're really based on self-preservation.
Right. And I think Maddie's zombie analogs, make sense. They are making a concerted choice to that a simpler life is a happier life. They are willing to forego those technological advancements in order to preserve the life that they know. And there are people that are still like that. People don't want AI. Like I think you're an AI person, Maddie P. Not that you are AI, but you're in favor of it. I'm more reluctant. I feel like, we don't have the safeguards yet or the guardrails. Obviously we're having a modern discussion, but take that same discussion to the blimp, the invention of the car, or any of these other technological advancements. People were afraid of trains.
That makes sense, but it has to be. You have to cut it off at the fear of the unknown, because they haven't seen a train, they haven't seen a car to be afraid of it. It's purely, and it's totally valid to be fear of the unknown, but it's not of anything specific or even remotely like what you're saying in terms of seeing it and not wanting it.
But there is a thought. It seems like there is a concerted effort to avoid. They feel like responsible for protecting their community from those ideas. God forbid one of their inhabitants sees a car, is like, I want one. The powers that be don't want that.
Right. What just occurred to me is not only like the outside influence, but internally, these people are capable of doing more than they are, because it's been centuries worth of sitting there in the same community and no one's invented anything. No one's done it.
Centuries of them just like darning sweaters.
Like no one thought of anything. They're not, I don't know, it must be like mind control.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's fair. It's fair. We could probably, we need to rewrite this whole script. It'd be fascinating.
That's just who they are, what they've done. And I think is more of not fear of advancement, but just fear of change, but not of anything specific.
Yeah, no, but honestly, that aligns with cultures for, centuries. The people that have made changes have had to force those changes upon the populace.
Humans do not like change. That is well known.
And I actually think it is more complicated than that, because I feel like there are humans that do.
I do, but I think majority of humans don't prefer change. I think we're very ritualistic. We're very rigid, and obviously not everyone is, but I think overall that's safer, and people tend to do what's more safe.
100%. Yeah, the inevitable train of human development that's constantly rushing towards you. You can't stop it, except somehow, probably by protecting these people from outside ideas or influences. True. This community did avoid anyone getting ideas to build a car or come up with a steam engine or whatever.
Oh, what do you think Iverson's going to go? He's going to go learn from them, but they're not going to try on his sweater or CableNet, talk to him about whatever.
That's an interesting question, and one I would be curious to explore if I were, making a remake of this. But I do think that for Iverson, who's like historical expert, he's more like fascinated by what it's like to live in this world that he studied. Like, was he right about certain things? Because think about historians is they're always sort of putting fossils together and making guesses, hypotheses about what this life was like, and now he gets to experience it. So I think his academic brain got sort of tapped from that point of view, and he has a rare opportunity, similar to if anybody saw the new Indiana Jones. He had that moment in ancient Rome where he's like, I should stay here and live with these guys. Remember that moment? Right.
I mean, exactly. It's like a Back to the Future of like Doc Brown stayed back there as Doc Brown. Iverson's not pretending. He's like he's just from the future, basically.
I might not have thought it through, but it feels like it's a one-way thing. Like I think he expects to learn from them instead of teaching them anything.
Sure. He's a very pure intention. He's a very nice person. I'm just saying, like, if Doc Brown went to 1955 and like acted as Doc Brown in 2000 or 1985, it's just a time traveler fully exposed is all I'm saying. 1,000-year-old Viking.
But he's making the choice to do that and to give up the advancements in the modern world, like, knowingly give that up, which I think is the larger point as far as the film or the story is concerned. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap things up. It's time for closing thoughts. Nick, it's your first show. How do you feel?
Amazing. Looking forward to new movies, new shows, new experiences. You always put me in these positions to watch movies that I never would have.
Well, hopefully we'll get you back for more films from 1974. Matty P, you're the veteran. How did you feel about tonight?
Incredible.
That's all he's got, ladies and gentlemen. So next up, we do a little Charles Bronson in a film from another director with Disney ties. Richard Fleischer, who did 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, brings us Mr. Majestic. That's our next film for discussion from 1974. In the meantime, guys, would you say goodbye to the audience?
Thank you so much.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, this 78th meeting of the No Name Cinema Society is adjourned.
I've looked around enough to know you're the one I want to go.